Business Hour. I'm Shireen Bhan. Legend industrialist Ratan Tata, who transformed the Tata Group into a global behemoth during his over two-decade tenure as chairman, was accorded a state funeral today. A philanthropist who led a modest lifestyle, an animal lover and a startup enthusiast who personally invested in over 40 companies, Ratan Tata died at the age of 86. Tributes have been pouring in from across the country and the world. Top industrialists, including Reliance Chairman Mukesh Ambani, Tata Sons Chairman N. Chandrasekaran, Aditya Birla Group Chairman Kumar Mangalam Birla and many others paid their respects at Mumbai's NCPA, where Tata's mortal remains were kept. And joining us now is Kumar Mangalam Birla, Chairperson of the Aditya Birla Group. Mr. Birla, many thanks for joining us today. It is in many ways a day that leaves a big void, not just for the House of Tatas, but for India. And I want to start by talking to you about that. In Mr. Tata's own words, he said he would like to be remembered as someone who made a difference. Nothing more, nothing less. What do you believe has been the impact that Ratan Tata has had on India and on the House of Tatas?
Well, I think, Shirin, to start with, it is a sad moment to lose someone like him. But I think it's also a life to be celebrated. I think that very few people can make the kind of impact that he has made in one lifetime. You know, his footprint, as you know, goes far beyond just industry. I think his legacy as a humanist, as a philanthropist, will probably be remembered even more than his legacy as just being an industrialist. I think that his ambition or his dream of making a difference, he's done more than, more than one can imagine to do that, to make a difference. He's made a difference to Indian, industry, to society, through all the charitable and philanthropic work that the Tatas do, some of which I know he was very involved with himself. All very quiet, didn't speak about it. You know that he was extremely low profile, shunned any kind of attention. And he was a true son of India.
Well, that is right. That's, an introvert, as he's been described by many, a man who led a life mostly in private. And over the course of his two-decade-long career as the chairman of Tata Sons, did evolve, as Mr. Gopalakrishnan told us. He became much more of a communicator as he grew into his shoes as a leader. But Mr. Birla, let's talk about the impact that he had as far as the House of Tatas were concerned. And, just to draw a parallel, for instance, between what the Birla Group has done and what the House of Tatas have done. The global ambition and the global aspiration, Mr. Tata was very clear. He wanted to take India to the world, but at the same time, he also wanted to bring the world to India. And we saw a whole host of joint ventures being inked across a diverse set of sectors, from consumer to technology, now semiconductors and defense, and the global aspiration of taking India to the world. How do you read the change that he brought in, both with the Make in India for the world as well as taking India to the world?
So, Shirin, if you remember, before he came in, the Tata Group was more a constellation of companies. I think he, after coming in, actually pulled them together. They became a true conglomerate in the true spirit after his coming in. So that was, I think, his first real impact in terms of the change he brought about in the Tata Group. He clearly had global ambitions. We know that. We know about some of the large acquisitions that he made abroad. I think that he was someone who was very exposed globally. He sat on many global boards. He sat on the board of the Ford Foundation. So I think that just gave him a broader vision. He didn't want to be constrained by restricting business only to India. And I think that his joint ventures reflect the same spirit of being global, even though you might be a business or one of his businesses or some of them may be based out of India. I believe he thought that they should have a more global flavor to them.
You talked about how he had to bring together these disparate companies into the house of Tatas and unite them, so to speak. But one of the other things that he did try to do and was in fact forced to do was also to ensure that the Tata Group, while maintaining its legacy and its values, also kept pace with the times. And I know that that is a challenge that you've also had to face, going from the womb to tomb days to a much more merit-based approach and attitude. How would you read the changes that Mr. Tata brought on in light of your own experience of what it takes to do that?
A little difficult to compare, Shirin. But I would say that I was on the board of Tata Steel, in the early 90s when he was going through this transition. And I remember very clearly that Tata veterans who were on the board were wheeled in wheelchairs. At least 2 or 3 in the board were people who were really old, but still on the board, not really able to even walk themselves. And I could see that was a very painful, disturbing thing for him. I mean, I don't think he liked the feeling of that at all, but he was extremely polite, his gracious self always. And I could connect with the things he did post that in terms of bringing in a retirement age or bringing in fresh blood. I think that he probably had far more constraints to be able to do that. He had an old guard, which was fiercely independent, if I can call it that. But I think he did all of that. He took his own time, but he did that rather well. And I think these are processes and institutions that are alive and kicking even today. So obviously he's created a sustainable global giant.
Yes, speaking of creating that sustainable global giant, and again, I want to draw parallels in, what it takes to be able to manage a conglomerate at that scale and that size. I mean, diverse businesses from defense to hospitality to technology. An architect by training, the ability to traverse and navigate a plethora of different businesses, Mr. Birla. I mean, that does take the ability to be a lifelong learner, doesn't it?
So I came in around the same time after my father passed away, Shirin, and I could see that he was learning very fast. We'd speak sometimes. I think he had a very clear view. He had his own way of running business. Tata Motors, as we know, was clearly his favorite. His eyes lit up every time Tata Motors was talked about. He said he didn't spend too much time on TCS because it was, a finely tuned machine where he didn't need to spend much time. So I think it was horses for the courses for him. He kind of chose where he wanted to spend time. Many of us spend time, say, for example, reviewing our businesses. He didn't do that. He was the big picture man. He set policy. He set the overall direction. Like I said, he brought together the whole group by creating a corporate center. And I think that all of that has stead the group in very good stead even today.
You said that you took over at the same time or around the same time that Mr. Tata took charge of Tata Sons. You've obviously, through the course of the past 2 decades, have had several conversations with him. Is there an enduring memory? Is there something specific that you have taken from his leadership style, from him as an individual that you've tried to incorporate in yours?
So, he was quite a giant, so I can't say I've taken anything from his leadership style, but I would say that he ran his group of companies like a true trustee, in the true spirit of trusteeship. He was himself very frugal. He had a very simple house. He had barely 2 or 3 staff at home, 2.5, I think, because one of them was, I think, part-time. Didn't allow himself any luxuries. He was fond of, I know he used to buy suits and shirts in excess of what maybe he should have, but that's about it. Very frugal, very simple. Didn't have too many needs at all. His whole life was about the Tata Group. And of course, giving back to India. I think that was a big theme in his life. He wanted to connect with the common person, and he wanted to, give back to India, which I think is really a remarkable legacy that he's left behind.
Yes, a philanthropist as well as an entrepreneur with the mindset of creating businesses that would serve India and India's interests. But, Mr. Birla, it's also been a unique structure that's operated for more than a century now, and it continues to work despite the challenges and despite the hurdles along the way. What do you believe makes the way that the Tata Group is structured, and it's as Mr. Gopalakrishnan says, it's hard to demystify the magic, but it still seems to work. What, to your mind, has ensured that it lasts and through the test of time and continues to create the value and the wealth that it does?
I think the very strong base of values that he reinforced, that's something that he inherited from, JRD and perhaps the generation before that as well, that we know that he was uncompromising about his integrity, also his compassion for, the marginalized people of society, for the downtrodden, the legacy of trust that he leaves behind. So I think this whole platform or foundation of very firmly held values by his family, and he kind of reinforced it in a very strong way. I think that is the biggest glue that will keep a group which is that large together. And of course, I think he also focused on bringing in the right talent, empowering people, taking the group global, like we spoke about. I think that all of these, that's all that one can do really. To keep an organization fit and competing, able to compete for the future. So I think in my eyes, he did all the right things. He had a fairly kind of a scattered set of companies when he inherited them, and I think that he leaves the group a much more cohesive, united conglomerate than when he inherited it.
Well, an empowerer, an enabler, and a uniter that in many ways sums up the legacy of Ratan Tata. Mr. Birla, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for speaking with us this evening on a day when India has lost one of her most loved business stalwarts. Appreciate your time here on CNBC TV18. Well, the tributes are pouring in. Leaders